Well, I'm pretty excited to try out this vacuum sealer, and somehow I've gone this many years without using a vacuum sealer before, but it has occurred to me that they're kind of ideal if you want to freeze foods and have them preserved really well, or if you want to save some money and buy bulk meat and then be able to process it down and then vacuum seal it into the size of stuff that you're actually going to use. One thing I just did is I bought, they're not in here anymore, but I bought a bulk pack of pork chops that were on sale, so they're really, really inexpensive. And I ate 2 of them for supper, and I had some left over. And typically, when you buy meat these days, at least at my grocery stores, they come in these plastic containers with basically saran wrap on them, and that's not a great way to freeze extra meat that you've got. It's not great. It's very flimsy, and so what I did is I have these out of air vacuum sealer bags, and my extra pork chops, I was able to vacuum seal them down, and I can label them. They've got these handy label patches, and I'll be able to put these in the freezer for another day. Out of air bags are 33% thicker than the food saver bags that you can get. And the nice thing is they're compatible with all the vacuum sealers, including the ones from Cabela's. So that's handy if you're getting your food processing equipment from Cabela's or elsewhere. And you can really feel the difference in the thickness of these out of air bags compared to the ones from Food Saver. So these are going into the freezer, and what I'm working on today is a bigger meat project. Here, that bigger meat project is a brisket. So this brisket I was able to get for $5 a pound. There's 20 pounds of brisket here, and what I'm going to do is break this guy down into more manageable size pieces. So it's cryovac in this kind of a thick bag, but that means I have to freeze it as a whole chunk, and I'll never probably cook it as a whole chunk. So my project today is I'm going to cut this down into like a reasonable size of brisket, and then I'm going to do some steaks, some stewing chunks, and some frying meat, and all of that is going to get sealed up in these out of air bags. They also have these big rolls, so you can just cut them to whatever length you want and seal them up. So this is going to be perfect later on when I'm maybe freezing some lake trout or other big fish fillets. But today the project is this big brisket. Okay, so I've laid down a piece of butcher paper here just to keep my kitchen a little bit tidier, and I'm going to open up this bag. Hopefully it's not too juicy. It might not be a bad idea to initially open this up over your sink. And I guess I could break this all down with my pocket knife. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use a bigger knife, and I don't want to damage my table, so I've also got a nice cutting board here for that. So here is a big brisket. Now, if you want to access some good resources on breaking down these larger cuts of meat to save yourself some money, I've been watching The Butcher Wizard, and there's other channels like that, but he does a really great job of showing you where to get inexpensive subprimal cuts or big cuts of beef, and then break them down into the kinds of cuts that you really enjoy cooking with. This was a really good find. I was at a yard sale and I got this knife for $2. $2 at a yard sale. It's a Henkel's carbon steel. It's really sharp. And what I want to do is find out where on this guy I can start trimming off some of the fat cap, which I will then render down to make some beef fat. I like using the beef fat for cooking, or I can use it in pemmican, or I might also, if I don't use it for that, I can bake bears with it. Lots of good uses. Now at $5 a pound, it's not a huge loss if I don't use the fat, but I like to use as much of it as I can. So we trim. I'm gonna set a little fat pile aside here. I have a couple videos on rendering bear fat, which I also really like to cook with, and I've had videos on rendering pork lard that gets a lot of views. Pork lard is also a great fat for cooking with, and beef fat I would follow the same process. So basically put the fat into a slow cooker. Usually I put a little bit of water in there to start, or you can use like a heavy cast iron pot on a really low heat setting, and you want to kind of cook that at a really low temperature. You don't want to burn the fat or the meat that's in there, so you're going to kind of simmer it down. That water that you put in initially just helps it to not stick to your pan, and as the fat renders out, that water is going to evaporate anyways, and it won't be a problem for you. I also, at my grocery store, so at the Sobeys that I go to, they sell the fat caps off of their prime rib roast. So they basically like peel that fat cap off and they vacuum pack one or two of them together, so you get like 20 pounds. And they sell that at a very reasonable price, and it is almost pure fat. So that's not really like a cut that you would get to salvage meat off of it. But if you're interested to render beef fat, that's a very economical way to do it. Or if your grocer or your home butcher is somebody that you can talk to, I'm sure you can get them to set aside bags of suet or beef fat for you, because they're basically working in the butcher shop doing this exact same thing, peeling off fat from all their cuts before they go out for sale. So you are paying less and you're taking on some of that work yourself. Okay, so I've probably got maybe 4 or 5 pounds of fat here. This piece has a lot of meat on it and then a lot of hard fat on the outside. I'm gonna trim these off into stew chunks or little frying pieces after. What I want to do now is to cut myself a brisket. So how much brisket do I want to cut? Maybe not much. There's no real like wrong way to do this. It's all meat, so if you don't like what you've cut, you can just cut it down into stew chunks and use it that way, or cut it down into steaks and use it that way. I also quite like beef fat, so I've left some fat on here. I'm not worried about there being too much fat on my beef. So there's my one brisket. I'll set that aside over here. Now you can see there's a fat line in there. So you can actually trim through here and get the fat out of the middle, and then start to do your stew chunks or your fajita meat. I'm going to maybe just try cutting a brisket steak off of this. So it does have, you can see the difference in the meat there. See the grain of the meat is running up and down here, but a little more sideways on that piece. And there's some hard fat in the middle. So that's probably not going to be a great steak cut. I'm going to trim around that piece of fat. Again, it has a ton of uses, although realistically what I might do is vacuum pack that down into portions and feed it to Ziggy over time. Okay, so I do have this like thin strip. Again, there's no bad way to deal with this. So I've got my nice brisket roast, probably 4 or 5 pounds of brisket there. And now I'm going to make my stew chunks. If you are a steak person, you can get the subprimals and cut your own steaks from them. There's good tutorials online about that. You can buy a whole strip loin and then cut the steaks yourself. Won't take you very much time, but it's quite a bit more economical to buy the whole strip loin and then cut your own steaks. An advantage there, like if you don't have a butcher shop near you that can custom cut meat the way you like it, is you can cut your own steaks down into the thickness that you prefer, whatever size you want. Okay, so there's a big slab of meat that's going to become stew chunks. I've exposed this harder fat now in the middle, and I'm going to take that out. Again, it's probably good to have a couple different sizes of knives. This is pretty tricky work with this really big knife to be trimming fat with it, but there we go. Okay, this is looking like lots of nice beef stew chunks, so I'm just going to go ahead and probably slice it into strips and then just cube it up into the size of stewing chunks that I want. And if I'm really particular, I can go back and trim some of these little fat pieces off. This is not venison where you want to get rid of all the fat. This is nice beef fat. So I'm probably just going to leave that on there. And when I got all my meat cut up the way I want, we'll switch over to the vacuum sealer and package up some good portions for future cooking. So as I go through, and there's some of this longer, stringier pieces, those are going to go into a pile for frying meat. If you want to do fajitas or something, just cut those to the size of little frying pieces that you want. Well, I changed my mind partway through. I liked the look of what I was cutting, and so in addition to the fat and the brisket, I cut a bunch of steak size pieces, so I'm going to vacuum seal those up. I have quite a nice pile of stewing beef, and I didn't end up doing too much of the stir-fry beef, but I do have a pile of that, maybe just under a pound, and I'm going to vacuum seal that up as well. So Here we go. I've got some vacuum sealer bags that are already set up as bags, and I've got some 100-foot rolls, which I can make custom size bags. More rolls and more rolls. I have a little peek at this here, the zipper vacuum sealer bags. These are quart size. Yeah, they've got a Ziploc top and then space for you to seal them, so that's handy if you're doing something like dry snacks and you want to be able to vacuum seal them, but then once you open them you want to be able to re-close them with the Ziploc. That's super handy. I'm not going to use those for the meat. What I'm going to use are the 8-inch rolls. 8 inches by 100 feet. Let's open this guy up. And it has a cutter. Tear here to remove, or don't, it's up to you, okay? Cool. So we can open this up. Okay. It's got a built-in sliding cutter. So I'm going to move over here to my clean surface and let's find the start of this roll. Okay. Let's say I want to do a roll about that much. The nice thing about the cutter is it's going to ensure that you have a nice even cut. That was nice and sharp. Now, plug this guy in. I don't think this uses a lot of power either, so I'm pretty sure I could run this off of my portable power bank if I wanted to go up to camp, for example, and vacuum seal some fish maybe, or take it on a hunting trip. Okay, I'm going to seal an end. So it's blinking right now, and then when it stops blinking, that means the seal's done. It's just got that heating element that it has to heat up. And it's done. So I have a sealed end. I'm going to fill it with meat. Make sure that's lined up in there. So it has an automatic shut off when it reaches vacuum pressure. It's going to automatically seal this bag now for me, and look at what a pretty package that makes. It's got a big long labeling strip on the side so I can write down these are some kind of brisket steak. All sealed up. Label that up, throw that in the freezer. Beautiful. So the other nice thing about these out of air bags is it's running you about 29 cents per foot when you buy these 100-foot rolls. So that makes it quite inexpensive to break down a big cut of meat. You're going to save money there. And then for every foot of bag from the roll that you use, it's costing you 30 cents to get a really nice vacuum sealed product. They're 30%, 33% thicker than the Food Saver bags, and quite a bit less expensive if you price them out online. So I'm really happy with them so far, and I'm really happy with how this kind of broke down and how yummy it all looks. The fat, I'm gonna put some of that aside for my dog Ziggy, and I'm gonna render some for cooking. This brisket, I'm gonna seal that guy up in one of the bigger bags, and I'm gonna do another row of these steaks and then vacuum seal up all the stewing meat and the frying strips. Maybe that brisket's gonna be a tight fit. It's not so bad. Not too bad. Nice. Try it on the EcoFlow Delta. Turn this around so I can see the power usage stats. Just under 20 watts of power, but the heating element to make the seal uses 100 and something, but only for a few seconds. So I could run this all day long on this big battery pack, which is going to be perfect for camping and hunting and fishing trips.